Take a deep breath. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the QTube, streaming to you from Carlisle, Doncaster, and London. I'm Brian Waters, and I run the QTube, which is a platform for aspiring or early career composers. Hello, everyone. And I'm delighted, as usual, to be joined for these regular feedback sessions by our two experts from Leeds Conservatoire, Brian Morrell and Stefan Gordon. I think most of you that tune in are familiar with them. Do you want to quickly introduce yourselves, and we can check the mics at the same time, Brian and Stefan?
Sure, yeah. My name is Brian. I work at Leeds Conservatoire, where I'm deputy head, and I also wrote the film degrees that we run there, and I also teach on the film degrees with Stefan.
I'm Stefan Gordon. I'm principal lecturer at Leeds Conservatoire. I work with Brian on the film music pathway, teaching film studies and also a bit of music production as well.
Excellent. So we do this on a regular basis. We release a new film into our library, which is free for members, and then we give everybody a month to create music for it, submit it free, and we go through them all and prepare feedback, which is sent out to everybody that submits. And then we go through a few of them on these live streams, and we choose one of them to receive a recording session with the string quartet, and we also do a prize draw for a sample library from Fracture Sounds, which we're very grateful for. So this one's been a really interesting one, both for you, the composers, and for us to go through. But before we start, I ought to let everybody in. We've got a bunch of people waiting who did submit. So Stefan, do you want to let them in?
Yeah, I'll let everyone in.
Here they come.
Yeah, here everyone is.
It's a big rush. Let's have an orderly procession, please. There they are. Look at them. Old friends, all familiar faces, mostly.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Everyone's being very polite and keeping muted, which I guess I appreciate. But you can say hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Hello. How lovely. So, yes. Hello. We're joined from composers all around the world. We receive submissions from all around the world, and it's really fascinating to hear what you do. We understand that this has been one of the most challenging ones, which I feel kind of proud of. And I hope you've enjoyed it. So, for the rest of the hour, over to Brian and Stefan, basically.
Okay, do you want to do that thing where we talked about doing an introduction before we give the feedback? Okay, yeah. So basically me and Steph are just going to say a few words about this submission, as we kind of do a lot of the time. It's always problematic when it's a very genre-specific music that's required. Mostly film music is, a lot of it these days is quite homogenized, etc. But Brian had asked you to obviously do something quite specific, which was essentially a bit of a jazz score. What we found on this, there were some entries where the music was just absolutely fabulous. Okay, it was just, the jazz writing was just fab. I mean, I know a thing or two about jazz, and it was really just lovely to listen to. There was a side issue that on a lot of those cases, the same people who were doing this really good writing, it wasn't always synced as well as it maybe could have been to the actual images. It's difficult syncing this because there's no dialogue to hang on, there's no different scenes, it's just one big introduction. But you have got some things that were set in place for you to basically write to. So what we found as a massive generalization is that there was some great music, but on those ones it wasn't always the case that it was sculptured to the actual film very well. So what I found myself doing was like, yeah, this is great music, this is great, this is fantastic. And then I was thinking, hang on, this is supposed to be film music, this is supposed to work with the film. The other side of that argument is there were a few submissions for people for whom jazz was a relatively new area to go into, and they were struggling with stuff like, chord voicing and the types of chords to use, the types of combinations of textures, all the things you would struggle with if you'd never written jazz before. But they had actually made a better job of actually scoring the film. of actually addressing the hit points. So we had this very interesting discussion today about 3 o'clock about, you know, what do we do in terms of, you know, are we awarding points mainly for does the music work, or are we awarding the same amount of points for is the music actually any good? And it is a difficult thing. It's something that doesn't normally come up because most of the stuff you guys do is just straight film music. So you get a hell of a choice in the kind of genre, the genre, the stylized approach you use. This one, it was jazz, obviously. And what that did was bring out of the woodwork all the great jazz writers who were writing some fantastic music, but often missing the point when it came to the film. And we also got some work from some music that wasn't fantastic, but the placement was superb. In other words, these people were great film composers, but maybe not so much strong jazzers. So that was a bit of an interesting, unique kind of thing. Steph, do you want to?
Yeah, I can pick up on some of that as well. As Brian said, this was really interesting actually. These submissions, or as Brian's covered up, there was some really great stuff. Reading people's notes as well was also interesting because it appeared that lots of people were sort of saying, well, I tried something a few times, but I abandoned it. And people actually in some of the notes said this was the toughest assignment that they've done, and it was also interesting because we'd had conversations before. A lot of the other clips have got voiceovers. It was difficult to find space. With this, there was no voiceover. You were clear to do whatever you wanted, and that brought its own problems. And part of those problems was that it was, I think, the brief was jazz or a specific genre. So, as Brian said, what was really interesting here was that as composers, music composers, obviously, you were going, right, my job's music. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where all your energy was. But with the problem there was that the film composer bit is how does it fit with the picture? In some ways you can say, well, it was a title sequence, anything goes. Yes, but also I think the difference was with some of them, that you were picking out things like in the clip there's a scene with a guy looking out of the window that you went, oh, actually there's a bit of a narrative moment, I can do a bit of shape round there. So with that was more film writing. So it was a really interesting conversation that we had earlier today where we brought both, I'm coming from the sort of film studies area and I was going, well, some of this was great, but it was kind of more, it felt more, it was written over the picture, which Brian had also pointed out as well. So I felt that this was really, really tricky. And it was tricky for you guys, obviously, in the first place. It was tricky for us to then go, well, how do we kind of feed back on this? And which ones, out of them do we go, well, this one was really... So I was really interested and would love to know what people's thoughts were on this. I mean, obviously I read people's sort of notes from their submissions, but I felt that, yeah, we need to sort of look at it in a way of going, well, yes, jazz is one thing, but jazz as a film score, did you think about that as well? So in other words, structure and punctuation was my big thing, and I felt that some of them, and I'm not taking anything away from the music, as Brian says, is that perhaps the energy was in the music, and maybe that other bit was forgotten about just because going, well, jazz isn't my thing, so that's what I've got to concentrate on, and then forgetting about the picture. So really interesting actually, this one, and absolutely I can see the difficulties of it.
Sorry, Steph,
go for it, Brian. Yeah,
just one thing. Obviously, you've probably seen films where they've got jazz scores at the beginning, and there's films like Pelham 1, 2, 3, which I think we did at one point, and there's also The French Connection, both of which have got really full-on, quite abstract jazz. Particularly French Connection, the intro for that is definitely very strange. But even what you find with this full-on hardcore 70s progressive jazz stuff is you'd still find that it is measured, okay, and it's not distracting. it's not so distracting to the film where you start listening to the music on its own. So what I'm saying is there is a way of writing jazz for an intro to a film and make it interesting jazz-wise, but also follow the conventions of film music and just make sure it doesn't crowd and it doesn't become overcooked, basically. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add, Steph.
Yeah, and just one other bit as well to add is because the conversation we had earlier, obviously the Q-Tube's about getting the chance for you to work on developing your skills as a film composer. So that was another thing that came into the discussion we had, and certainly in my mind, it's like, the key in it. And I always think, especially the point of this is for you to have these get these exercises, and to develop what you're doing. But I think it's a good exercise to also, look at the film and think, right, well, who's that character, or what's that point there that shapes the narrative, and you create your own narrative out of it if possible, really. I mean, this is the thing about film composing, because it's music, and this is the thing I always say, is that, yes, of course it's music, but it's also musical storytelling at the same time. So I think that would be my main point. But it was, definitely a tough one. And also, as Brian started out with this, there's some great writing, no doubt about it.
I mean, just from the Q-Tube perspective, I was really delighted to see that the way that everybody lent into that kind of retro style. That was really fantastic to hear, because obviously the majority of the times that we do this, we've got a much more orchestral style for the most part. So this was really good to hear this being pulled out from our sort of community, if you like. I really enjoyed and was really impressed with that. And I think that down the line, it would be quite interesting, I think, this is one of the other things we discussed today, to maybe do some sort of clip where we had a combination of that kind of retro and jazz vibe, but there was also the thing of dealing with a bit of a story and some dialogue and characters and things like that to try and get both aspects. Perhaps that's something we'll look at.
Because we've gone from voiceover dominating to absolutely, no voice or no dialogue. So where it's completely open. So we were saying earlier that maybe a combination of things where there is some space, but there's also some dialogue in there, so you can get used to doing that.
Because when you're writing orchestrally, or even when you're using synths and kind of some, modern synth sound and stuff, you've still got a multitude of stylistic avenues that are open to you. Whereas when they come along and say, right, this is jazz, that just shrinks and it becomes very, very minimal. You can do the retro thing, you can do the 70s thing, or some people did a lot of jazz funk, which worked just as well. Some people did a kind of easy listening, I know that's sounds like a derogatory term, but it's not, where you've got like tin muted trumpets and nice string chords and stuff. That worked just as well, because that fits into the retro package. Doesn't quite qualify as jazz, but it works just as well. But yeah, that's what we found anyway. Yeah.
So can I ask, like, of you that are here on the Zoom, so you can indicate with your hands if you like, how many of you was it the first time really that you'd had a go at doing something of this kind of style, like jazz, basically, if we can be as broad brush as that? I mean, I really love that. I really respect that, you know, and that's what we want. That's what we want. That's what the Q-Tube's all about, really, and a safe place to play. And I see you've got your jazz trumpet there, Sally, at hand, just in case you feel.
So, sorry, Aaron, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I didn't hear the question very clearly. I think it was if we enjoyed working with jazz. Is that the question? Well, yeah, it was pretty enjoyable, and at the time, I have friends who play the saxophone and everything, and it was fun to be able to use some of like what I've heard from them do and put it in a composition. But yeah, I couldn't hear your question though, so that's what I was going to ask.
The question was simply whether this was the first time you'd attempted to write something of this kind of style.
Yeah, I tried before, but I think that this time I got closer to what I wanted.
Great. And I mean, I know a few of you also commented that it had kind of prompted you to go and listen to some music that you wouldn't usually listen to, and that's really nice as well, I think, from our perspective. Oh, there goes Brian's doorbell.
It was funny because I think I put it in my notes. I was quite arrogant to begin with, you know, when you introduced the whole thing. I thought, well, I don't have to do that, you know, and I'll go for my electronic music and I'll do this and I'll do that. And I tried, and it just didn't suit the film, you know, and I suppose that's what we've got to think about as well, you know, when we're writing for clients, you know, you as the client were actually wanting a specific sort of music. So it was therefore down to us to have a go at it.
I read that in your notes.
If we were out of our comfort zone.
Yeah. I did read that in your notes, and it was interesting when you put that. I just one of the sort of question I think to put out as to everyone really was that because it was, as you said, it was like, well, what else can work? So and the word retro, I really, when I was going through them, I thought, you know what, this is tough, because if you're not get up to the or having experience in doing sort of retro jazz in this case, how's this gonna pan out? How did people feel about doing sort of a retro style? Was it challenging? Oh, David, yeah. I can't hear you, David. Are you muted? Yeah, I can't hear you.
Doesn't look like he's muted, but
no, it doesn't. I just can't hear him.
Yeah. Speak up.
No.
We oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Darren.
Darren. Oh, we'll come back to you, David, in a sec. Yeah. Darren. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is interesting for me because I don't consider myself a jazz musician. I found, I think I put this in my note, I found an online course, a place called Open Studio Jazz, and I've been learning some of the basics of jazz piano, jazz harmony, chords, scales, and things like that. And I can tell you, at this time last year, I would not have been able to write what I had written without having at least some of the basics of some of the jazz harmonies, some of the chord extensions, and things like that. So I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from is, and I didn't join that to become a jazz musician. I joined it because some of the snippets I saw and talking about harmony and theory in a pretty unique way and how to get from one chord to another and around was really interesting. And I thought this can help me become a better musician, whether or not I'm really interested in being, you know, a bebop or a jazz artist. It's like there's a lot of really good foundations there. And the other thing I did when I first saw it is I went to Spotify and I pulled up some Lalo Schifrin playlists and just put them on in the background as I was doing
Yeah.
other things, and Spotify did its thing in recommending other things associated with it. So that sort of gave me a foundation of what are some of the tones, what's sort of the feel,
Yeah.
what does this sound like, and then that sort of shifted me into maybe I can try some of the stuff that I've been learning, some of these jazz chords, and trying a few different approaches to see what might work, and that was sort of my foundation to try and do something I hadn't done before.
It's worth knowing that I don't know if you already know this, but me and Stefan did a session, a masterclass session on jazz a few weeks ago, which should be on the website. Is that all right, Brian? Yeah, and that's got a similar thing. It's got the extent, just a very basic level, the extensions, the colours you can get, the different tone colours, etc. So if you haven't had a look at that, have a look.
Did any? I was going to ask actually whether any of you had actually dipped into the masterclass and the cheat sheet.
I know one person definitely has.
Cool.
Oh yeah. So I think David, you wanted to. Can we hear you now? I still can't hear you actually.
No.
Yeah. Sorry.
The lips are moving.
Should we?
Francisco, did you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes, I have to say that I am familiar with jazz, and I enjoy it, but it's the first time I have the opportunity to write for a video, and I look for YouTube, Law and Order, and things like that to get inspired. And also, I have to say that I use the teaching of the master class of Brian about the chord of 10th and things like that. So I have enjoyed doing it. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, there's some interesting comments in the live chat as well, guys, actually. I know that Brian and Stefan are going to find it interesting that somebody was considering paying a real percussionist, which I think would really help with this style of music, to have a real percussionist. And then somebody else was saying that, well, several people saying that they really loved the challenge and the opportunity to listen to some different music. And then somebody saying that they really enjoyed the masterclass, Brian and Stefan.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good
Great.
stuff. Right. Do you want to crack on?
Yeah.
If Dave, we can always speak to David if he swaps his mic out at the end.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah. I'm a long way. Here, let me get the video. I didn't want you to see me with expressions on my face when I was trying to. The microphone's on my camera and it's mounted above my monitor. So, to go back to the question asked 15 minutes ago, I grew up on a lot of that stuff, the 60s and 70s theme shows and detective stuff, and I loved it. And I tried to do that and emulate it. I consulted some books, Lalo Schifrin, and I think I had way too many ideas, and they're all there, and I didn't settle for one theme, because if you listen to those, you're right. There is a theme, and they've only got, 45 seconds at the beginning of a show or a movie. And they're great writing. For example, the Naked Gun theme, which is all this apparent of those themes.
Class.
I had that in my head, couldn't do it. Maybe 3 bars, and then that was it. So that was but it was a lot of fun. I think I learned some progressions, but I tend to noodle if I feel I have the opportunity. When the woman comes in on the screen after the original title, that I thought, well, this is the time to just sort of bebop and freeform. And when I listened back to it, it didn't really work, at least for me. So that's my take on it. And I got my microphone working, so that's
Excellent.
We're always struggling ourselves with this technology. You should see us tearing our hair out when we're preparing for these lives.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, Stefan, over to you.
Yeah, right. Let's start. So we are going to start with Tom Borner. Actually, I just cue this up, and hopefully you can all see. Right. Okay. Let me know if there's any problems seeing or hearing it. Right. Here we go. This is Tom's.
Okay, should I go first, Steph?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I thought this is one of the ones that were, I mean, musically just fantastic. Is Tom with us, by the way? Brian? No.
You know as much as I do. I don't think so.
Okay, no worries.
No,
Yeah.
you didn't know.
All right. I just thought this was great musically. Great drum fill at the beginning. Nice theme on guitar or synth, I think, supported by a lovely kind of Rhodes-sounding electric piano. Bass and drum rhythm section really drives this piece. And at 20 seconds, there's this great effect where the chord appears briefly, which sounds a little bit like horns, just really good. The initial chord creates this great rush of emotion. There's this thing where he does this effect where the music kind of goes and he just brings it up to the climax. Superb. Later on, there's some excellent horn writing. I would say that the use of textures in this piece is excellent, and you're really locked into the whole, I hate this word, but the whole zeitgeist of kind of 70s American cop show kind of things. Of the narrative, and the music is so expressive and it evolves to and from different feels, all of which complement each other. The 7/4 rhythm is really good. I mean, when I first figured it was 7/4, I was like, God, how's this going to roll? But it actually worked really good because it actually keeps you on your toes when you're listening, because you never fall into a comfortable groove because it's 7/4. I did think the drums were too loud in the music generally, and I thought the music was too loud in the way it was synced to the sound design. There were bits where we couldn't, we could barely hear the sound design in the background. So we've got to watch that in future when you are putting it to the film. You've got to be very aware of the balance between the music and the film. Obviously, that will be a dubbing mixer in the real world, but obviously that's down to you. The only issue, and it is a big issue, is that sometimes the music doesn't sync as well as it could with the various hit points in the film. Now, you can get taken away with the music, as I did. I thought the music was fantastic. I've put here, luckily the piece is so good that I think you almost got away with it, but it might be better off if the sync points, if you could go back and maybe address it and get the sync points to be more obvious. But excellent music. Over to you, Steph.
Yeah, similar points. My notes. I thought it was great actually. I thought really great shape to it, really well crafted as a piece of music. I thought, and it had real commitment to it. It felt very kind of like you were part of it, and you could really feel the energy from like all the instruments and stuff. So it was, from that perspective, it was great. I did. Similar... Oh, there you go.
I think somebody needs to mute. Somebody needs to mute.
I've just muted them.
Okay, right. So I thought this drum sound, because Brian mentioned about the drums being too loud actually, and I thought the drum sound was really good actually, but I did think that in terms of production with drums, because some of the other instruments were kind of panned, and I thought you could probably do a bit more panning on the drums actually to give it a bit more space, and that might have helped with the levels as well, particularly with the ride cymbal, because that seemed to have real presence, and I thought having it sort of centre sort of had less impact. So hand claps in there, and I thought, well, hand claps always gets my vote. I thought that was a really nice touch. And the kind of floor tom stuff to bring it to a close at the end was really good. So I think musically it was well crafted. As Brian picked out, actually, one of my things that I noted about this was that it was kind of covering things over, particularly like we mentioned this earlier. I think Sally mentioned it about things over the sound of the engine and things like that. The music could have been shaped. It was just sort of over the top of it. So I think, as a musical piece, is what it goes back to our opening points. Really great piece of music. It had hooks as well. It had all those ingredients, but working with the film, it felt a little bit too on top of it. But really, I think as a sort of piece of music, and the recording quality was really, really well done actually. So good stuff.
Yeah, fantastic.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. Well done, Tom. Thank you for participating. On to the next one, Stefan.
Right, so we've got Michael Cowan next. Let me just fire this up. Right. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that and hear it.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So this one again, musically, just fabulous. I really love the intro, the kind of all that kind of like do da da. You know, really kind of like Starsky and Hutch 70s kind of Tom Scott. I don't know if everybody knows Tom Scott, but it's great. One of my favourite kind of crossover jazz artists, and this was typical Tom Scott really. Love the initial bass and the high strings that really complement it musically. Just such a great relationship between those high strings, which are a bit kind of like easy listening, but then the bass line comes in there. Great vibe. Around 20 seconds we get the Fender Rhodes riff, which is this kind of hopefully you can hear this and it's this great little thing where you go from the minor chord to basically a chord a tone low. In this case it's E minor to D over an E. Basically it works in any key, and it's just a great kind of crossover kind of jazz fusion pop rock kind of thing. And that takes us right into the 70s cop show feel. It really delivers us perfectly into that. When we get into, there's a nice bit when we see the silhouetted woman. You actually have managed to basically utilize that in your music. You manage to create this great sus feel in the chords, where there's quite a lot of chords that are either suspended chords or slash chords, and not just straight ahead major or minor chords, which basically works beautifully. The amazing string thing over the title card, absolutely fabulous. Great writing, the way you just brought it all down, and we see the title card, and then we see this lovely kind of typical 70s kind of string thing going on. I'm not sure the tempo change was possibly a great idea, because there isn't a kind of comparable visual mirror image of that in the actual film. I can understand why you did it, because I think musically, if this was a piece of music on its own, you would definitely need to lift it. And you did that by basically raising the tempo, but visually, I'm not sure that worked as well. Some great jazz piano and on the Fender Rhodes as well. Absolutely superb string writing, and just generally a great piece of music. But the clincher is that quite a few of the hits weren't really referenced. Some of them were, which was good, but some of them weren't. And again, the music was a little bit on the loud side, just in terms of the way it's dubbed. That's all. There's a tendency when people are writing exciting, vibrant music like this to basically just put it up to number 11. And, you know, it's what I would do as well until somebody told me not to. So just watch that. But great piece of music. Great. Stefan?
Similar. First thing I noticed was that and this is, I think, something that sort of, I'd say for lots of people, you gave it a title and you called it Retro Cop Movie. So it was like, we knew straight away, you know, where you were going with it. So I thought that was a really nice touch to give it a title and that title. So you set this out. That's exactly what it was. As Brian mentioned, I think it was, you know, if it was a track called Retro Cop Movie and it was just the music, you know, absolutely, including the time change actually. Because you'd be like, well, yeah, you know, you can then imagine what's going to happen. You know, you imagine what's happening on screen. The problem with it, I felt that it wasn't really in connection with the actual visuals. It was as an overall aesthetic, but not, you know, not to the actual like hit points and that kind of thing. But I thought it was great. All the ingredients were there. I felt, you know, for me personally, and you know, I'm certainly not a jazz expert in any way, but I thought, you know, it felt a little bit too loose in some of it. But I mean, it had a real vibe, and it had the real vibe of the, you know, the players and stuff. But I felt, you know, things were maybe sitting as well as they could have done. I thought the production was good, and it reminded me there's quite a few actually of these, because it's a retro clip and we've gone for the retro vibe, and lots of people have obviously gone down that road. Is maybe that was the production can also be a bit more retro. If you're going to go retro, do it. Do you know what I mean? I think, so in other words, it felt a little bit clean, so it could have a bit more grit to it. So I know it's difficult to do in like Logic or whatever, but I've done this a bit myself, playing around with stuff in Logic. Is that if you use like valve amp simulators to give it that kind of valve sort of more grit to it, if you like. And I think that, you know, if we're going to go retro, let's go completely retro. Do you know what I mean? Or and you know, not with everything, but I think particularly with drums, that might have been worth thinking about to give it that. If you know, to actually, if you want to call it a retro cop movie, have a bit of retro production in there as well, alongside it. So yeah, I'd noted that down actually. That was to valve amp simulators, etc. So, but yeah, I mean, musically great again, but getting it tight to the picture for me. But well done.
There is just picking up on that, Steph, that regarding the drums. What Steph says, you know, in order to make it retro, the drums are absolutely crucial. And I did a film for Steph, actually, funnily enough, years ago, thousands of years ago, where I had to create, it wasn't jazz, but I had to create a very, in this case, a 70s, 80s kind of game show, believe it or not, of all things. And I had to create this kind of 70s, 80s TV show thing. And there's no way Logic drums or Cubase or anything like that would do. And I found this software, it came on discs back then, called Drums on Demand. I don't know if they still exist, but if they don't, it's probably become something else. And they were relatively cheap, and it's just basically loads of fills, loads of rhythms, and they all come with a bunch of fills that you can put in. And when you surround it with arranging that's also done properly, the drums just sounded real. Yeah. End of story. So, you know, that's the way to go. You know, don't try and do it in Logic drums or anything like that. You know.
Yeah, I noted that on one of not one of tonight's ones, but I think on somebody's submission about trying to sort of recreate some of this drum stuff. This is the problem again where what we talked about at the beginning, to do it in a kind of Logic virtual session drummer and stuff. It's going to be really tough actually. And one way, it's like the piece before I mentioned, if you with production, if you do a bit more spread, the way I do it is that I'm imagining that I'm sat behind the kit and you will have the floor tom on your right hand side and the snare on the left and the hi-hat on the right, to have it sort of spread as though you're the player. It just creates that kind of gives it a bit more spread and gives it that bit more real, and then you're less danger of getting it sort of just sounding like a sample, I guess. But drums take forever anyway. I mean, even if you're doing real drums, they take a long time, so you've got to really allow time to get drums right. But yeah, it's a good piece.
Excellent, thank you guys. On to the next one.
Right, next we have Toby Wilson, and Toby's with us, I think. Yeah, he is. Yeah, right. Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Excellent.
Great. Okay, I thought this was great. I mean, brilliant. The intro, that kind of initial intro, reminded me a little bit of the 70s TV show The Professionals. Just that kind of like, that kind of really kind of great like jazz funk vibe. Great playing, great guitar stuff all the way along the line. Creates a kind of, I've put here, a sultry, dark, and dirty cop show feel, and that's exactly what the piece, what the thing needed. I thought the guitar was too loud in the mix, to be honest with you, compared to the rest of the music. And again, I thought the music was a bit too loud in comparison to the film. You could hear more of the effects than you could on the other one we talked about, but the music still became it became louder than it would be in the real world. If this was an actual theme on television or whatever, the music simply wouldn't be that dominant. It wouldn't be that loud. Sometimes, with that volume thing in mind, sometimes the clarity of the chords, the chords were brilliant by the way, but sometimes the clarity of the chord changes were overwhelmed a little bit by the kind of mix and by the percussion and by just the general loudness of it. Some of the subtleties in the chord change were a little bit difficult to realise. Some great guitar and bass work. The minimal drums at the beginning, which was great because it exposes the great playing on the kind of guitar and bass. I'm loving the introduction of the horns as well, the way you introduce them. You got that classic American feel. I think the trumpets around 111. Again, this is really, really well crafted. Great arranging. I love the bit around 35, I think it's around 35 seconds when the organ comes in. That actually, when I listened to it online, I heard that better than I just did there when we shared it on Zoom. Maybe that's a Zoom thing. But when I heard it online, the way the organ came in, that was just beautiful. I mean, the timing to bring it in right there was just exquisite. It serves the music and the picture. I mean, it serves the music really well. Having the organ textures is obviously good, a great thing, but it's nothing if you don't know how to use them, and you clearly do know how to use the organ textures, and along with the rest. You've locked into the vibe really well, and the only thing, which is going to sound like a long playing record, is that it might benefit a little bit more if it locked in more to the images. First of all, it was too loud for the images, so it was a bit distracting in that sense alone. So the dubbing was a bit off, but also, I mean, you know, there were some bits in this clip that were crying out for some kind of a musical gesture, and I think that maybe the excitement of the piece just became too much, and maybe you overlooked one or two of those. But I mean, this is not taken away from the fact that it's a great piece. So well done.
Yeah, similar. I thought it was great. I was just the energy in it. I was just really spot on. I mean, it had all the great ingredients of, like, you know, funky bass, wah-wah guitar, had sort of disco elements in there as well. It was just that I'm a big, massive fan of, like, Stax Records, actually, and so, like, there's moments of, like, Booker T and the MGs. I thought of, like, late 60s, early 70s. That I thought this is really cool. I thought you really sort of hit your stride with it, and you felt like you were really comfortable doing this. Similar points for me, actually, volume wise. I thought it was the bass that was a bit too loud for me. It was like, and I only thought it was okay at the beginning, but once other layers start to come in, and they were important layers as well, is that the bass was still sort of a bit too high. I noticed it when I can't remember the title card. I think it's like the Q2 production bit, and you've got percussion, more layers of percussion coming in, and I was still hearing the bass at that point. I mean, obviously the bass still needs to be there, but it was sort of poking out in the mix. So I thought, maybe you just needed to rejig things around. Brian's right. Listening to it over Zoom, everything felt quite compressed from what I remember hearing this before, just hearing it not over Zoom. But I thought it was really, the guitar playing actually was really spot on. I thought that wah-wah guitar, really. But even before that bit came in, great. Like Brian said, I think just maybe tighter to the picture. I thought the ending was the bit I noticed when you could probably. I mean, it's good to see you end it, but then maybe a bit more space for those little section of voices at the end. So maybe that bit tighter to the clip. But I think, as Brian pointed out, I think maybe the energy that was coming across in this track. That was where all your energy went, rather than sort of shaping it like we've been talking about earlier. But great work. I loved it. I mean, it was a proper sort of 70s funk, soul, disco track. So well done. Any thoughts, Toby? Any on it? Is it a tricky one to do? Oh,
I think he's muted.
You are muted. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
No, I think all of those points are well made, really well made. And I mean, I did the piece in Logic. I was actually on holiday at the time. I'd only got my MacBook with me, so I think one of the points my wife made to me when she had a listen back, who's my biggest critic, was I hadn't got any Wi-Fi where I was, so the sample libraries that I downloaded were like the basic ones. So I was worried about the track, some of the instruments sounding not as good as they could, and also compared to the wonderful, the jazz productions that we've just heard, I thought mine was more of an unambitious 12-bar, sort of 3-chord bash. But I was keen to sort of introduce that dissonance and then. Try and just by way of introduction, I've only recently joined the Q-Tube through a fluky. I've been working on Fiverr producing pop songs for people for a long time, but with the way that AI is kind of taking some of that work away, and the success I had through a fluky thing with a film score, I've started sort of coming towards this, moving more and more towards doing this, and. I suppose I was trying to apply some of the songwriting stuff to this piece where I try and sort of just keep the story moving all the time, you know, so you're introducing different elements, and I think as I was doing that, I failed to hit some of the visual cues that you guys mentioned. I think you very well. Yeah, I take on board all of the comments, and I'm really, I agree, thankful for them. So that's all I've got to say, guys. Thank you.
Well, great. It's a great piece. So well done.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you find it useful. So I see your beautiful collection behind you. What's your main instrument?
I'm a guitarist primarily, but I get a lot of the work with American clients. I work for country music, so I play pedal steel guitar and dobro. That's the kind of thing that gets me into the thing. But I would have put some pedal steel in this if I'd got it with me on holiday.
I was going to say
it doesn't travel very well.
All right. Well, I think that's amazing for having done it just out of the box on holiday.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly as well, all of the instruments that you heard on there are like the cheap Toman Harley Benton copies of the instruments that I've got here. So I don't think there was a guitar there that cost more than 100 quid new. So that's just it just shows, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it worked really well. Yeah, well done, brilliant, kudos. You were obviously in the zone in your holiday there, sitting by the pool. Okay, next one.
Right. Okay, so next up we've got Troy Centofanto. Let's find this one. Right. Hopefully you can all see and hear that.
Great. Okay. Again, I thought that was really great. From a musical point of view, I thought that was really good. I love that introductory dissonant chord. That was so symptomatic of the kind of one of the things we looked at on the last masterclass we did, when we looked at, the one before, when we looked at kind of jazz TV music and jazz generally, and we looked at Quincy Jones' music for a TV show called Ironside. And that introductory chord really reminded me, it wasn't the same chord or anything like that, but it reminded me of that approach. Really, really great beginning. You never go wrong by using a powerful dissonance at the beginning of something like this. I did think the muted trumpet was a bit loud, the one that comes in almost straight away. I think it was a tin mute or a Harman mute, and that was a bit too loud. Around 11 seconds, we have a nice bit of piano dissonance, which is really good. You really hit the nail on the head when you get to, I think it's 17 seconds, and we hear that lovely flute motif over that lovely kind of that lovely E minor 9 chord. And again, if you're trying to create something which is laid back and retro, you can't go wrong with a minor 9 chord. Essentially, you could write an entire piece built around it. I thought there were some top quality jazz changes. I think you went from an E minor 9 chord to I think a B flat 7 with a sharp 5, which is just this really wicked jazz chord change. Really nice rhythm behind it as well, really pulsating, but at the same time laid back. I did think the drums were a little bit loud compared to the rest of the music, and I thought the music was too loud in comparison to the sound design of the film itself. It was probably made worse by Zoom, but when I listened to the original thing, I couldn't hear much of the actual underlying film itself unless the music went quiet. You have around 30 seconds, you have this bass bottom end seems to drop out of the chords. I know there's probably a musical reason for that, but it was a little bit strange. It might be best to just keep that whole bottom end, thick bottom end bass in all the way through, because everything else carried on as normal. It's just suddenly the bottom end seemed to just disappear. The same theme that worked on a solo flute didn't really cut it in exactly the same way when you applied it to a brass tutti section, particularly the semi-quaver triplets. They're quite good to do on a solo instrument, but when you're trying to emulate brass section, that can sound a bit scrappy. And if you make it spot on using samples, you got the opposite problem where it sounds too clean, So what we've got here, the phrasing at 104, I wasn't entirely sure about that, and the intervals in particular. Maybe that will work. Maybe work on piano and guitar, but not so much the way you did it. Also, you really do need the brass and the lower end. I know I've mentioned this before. It's an important point. The syncopated bit at 120, that was fantastic. Some great jazz phrasing and some great kind of jazz voicing as well. Not entirely always sure about the distribution of the textures and the instrumentation. That might be where you were a little bit indulgent and it just got a little bit loud and stuff like that. Everything seemed to go up to number 11. Some of the instrument sounded not quite right sometimes, and I think that's a volume issue, to be honest with you. For the authenticity to be right, with jazz samples have to be right, but most of all the instruments have to be playing something they would actually play. And that's the key really to writing good jazz music, is it has to be playable by the players. Like I said, the music too loud for the clip, but really, really good. I'm not sure about the tempo change where it went a lot slower later on. Musically, great, but I'm not sure it worked in context of the clip. But great piece of music. Over to you, Steph.
Yeah, it's really good to hear Brian's feedback on this, because because as I said, I'm absolutely far from I call myself an expert on, certainly not on jazz. And when I heard it, I was like, wow, this really ticks the box, and it's really great, and it doesn't. And it's really interesting to hear how Brian's sort of mentioned the bits that do work, and so from a kind of jazz perspective, and things that don't. But I think where I'm going with this is that it was similar to what I said before, because it had all the right ingredients, it had the right feel to it, as a kind of retro 70s, jazz piece for those kind of images. But I thought it just the mix again. So I thought it just needed to be a bit more gritty. So it felt like it was a retro piece, but yet it was done very cleanly, kind of more contemporary, like Logic or whatever. So I know that. So if you look at the images, the way the images are, and they've got that kind of sort of 70s tone to them, I think that you have to think of that kind of tone to the music as well. I think that was my take on it, because as a piece of music, I thought this is great. It absolutely ticks the box, but it was the mix. for me that I thought, oh, it's a little bit sort of clean sounding. I mean, I'd written down that, really outstanding work from many levels in terms of the way, the kind of musical vision for it. But to get that authenticity to take it to the next level, it was maybe maybe it was the production. As Brian said, one of the things about in this about it's being synced to the picture, it's the bit with the police siren, because then the guitar part then takes over at that end bit, and so it breaks down. And I thought actually the guitar part came in too soon, and if you'd have gone the other side of the siren rather than on top of it, it would have had more impact. So again, for me it's punctuation and looking at the film as the guide to your structure. So I felt like you'd written on top of it rather than around it, and that was a good example. It was that moment of the siren. I think if you'd have left that not completely blank, but not had a guitar that's sort of, in terms of the frequency levels of a guitar over the top of the siren, because then for the audience it's like they'll be potentially be going, what am I listening to? Am I listening to the siren, or am I listening to the guitar? So I think it's to just have that sort of clarity of being, and it's the thing of having a real understanding of film music writing, is just to be let the film do the talking, and then you fit around what's being said in by the film. But I that. One of the bit was I felt he could have probably brought it to a close earlier. I think you'd also kind of written over those voices at the end. I mean, I'd mentioned this before about other people, so I felt again a bit more shape. But as a piece of music, I thought it was really very well done, and I noted down. I look forward to hearing more of your submissions, because there's some real potential here. So well done.
Lovely. We got 2 left, is that right?
2 left, yes.
All right. Who was it going to be? Everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat.
Next we have Sally, actually.
Oh, Sally.
Right. Okay. Here we go. Let's this clip.
Okay. I thought this was really good. Pardon me. I thought this was really good. I thought the intro, it had this real beautiful abstract kind of jazz sound. The F minor 9 chord, which kind of goes a lot of the way through it, it's kind of like just instantly gets you into that vibe. I mean, you know, if you use chords like that, I think one of the earlier people used the E minor 9, F minor 9, beautiful chord. The nasal quality to the sax is superb. The sax is brilliant. I've put here that in music there's always a focal point. It can be structural, it can be the arrangement, it can be the textures, but there's always a point where it kind of goes, I'm here. And for this piece it was the sax. The sample, and to a large extent the way it's played, was just spot on, absolutely superb. I wasn't sure if the piano worked as a melodic instrument earlier on. The high kind of melodic phrasing on the piano, I thought it was a little bit too polite, and it had trouble getting through the arrangement. Basically, I think you have to have it quite high for it to penetrate the arrangement. I thought the chord, I think it's 14 seconds, where it's the kind, I think it's a C minor 9. Just again, beautiful stuff. There was one bit where you play that C minor 9 chord and you've got a melody, you've got a C natural in the melody, and I'm sure this was deliberate. I'm sure this is not a mistake, but it didn't. There was one bit where it was a little bit off. Maybe if you'd have written on adjustment or whatever, or phrased it differently, but it just seemed to stick on this C note, and that was a bit of a shame. But gorgeous chords, and I love the dissonance. Also, the bit where you use the brass octaves before you come back to F minor, you use this. So F minor is the chord, and you use this thing where you go and you play this E flat octave thing. That would have worked better if that would have been part of a chord. So instead of going, you were something like, you know, saxes, trombones, and then back to the F minor. So I think when you're doing that punctuated, syncopated E flat note, just spread it over and make it a jazz chord, basically. Make it a C7 flat 10. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. Where we go? Strings come in around 20 seconds. Really nice changes there. I mean, they work really well. Nice chord changes generally in the piece. The texture and the way the saxes are used is quite addictive here. I think it's a really strong point. But I've put here, you know, there's just one or two bits where the sax is playing a couple of dodgy notes. I mean, they're not dodgy. I mean, they're not like wrong, but they're basically notes that maybe you might want to rethink. But great. But also the big difference with this, I'm sure Steph will talk much more about this than me, is the way that it actually hugged the pictures. It actually responded to the pictures, and it was film music. It was a good jazz piece, okay, but it was good film music, and it actually was sculptured to the actual thing, to the actual film itself. I did think the music got a little bit loud occasionally, but generally speaking, you could hear most of the sound design. So I thought the way you'd used it filmically was really spot on. So well done. Over to you.
Yeah, well done, Sally. I did really like this. I thought it was really very well realised, actually. And again, similar to the last piece, it's great to hear Brian's take on it, things that I wouldn't have known, that you know, that I'm sort of learning from as well. But I think the key to it, as Brian said, is that how you wrote for the film. I also, it's like we said at the beginning, when I read your notes that you wanted to do something else, when you tried something else, you went, actually no, this is, I've got to work with the picture, this is what the picture. So you followed the picture. So not only did you follow the picture in terms of its overall vision, but you followed the picture and how it was structured. So there was a couple of things. The moment where it leads up to the shot of the person's hands on the typewriter, so you sort of shaped it up to that point there, allowing that to have its moment. I thought that was great. But then you went even further down the line when you were doing, and you talked about it when you mentioned earlier about the roar of the engine and then the siren, left that space, and then you came back in with the hooks as well. You came back in because in some ways you think, well, maybe that's the end of the music, it's gone, but you come back in for the last bit. Great, that's proper film music punctuation to me. And then you did it again for the end bit and left that space at the end. Another little thing that I sort of noted, I thought this when I just listened to it now, actually, it was your use of reverb, actually.
Yeah.
So the use of reverb allowed that bit more, and reverb on the right things as well, to allow that space for the picture to work. And it provided a colour that matched the images, the colour of the images, and particularly, as Brian says, the sax. Because the sax, and I think you put it in your notes that you struggle to find a sax sample. So the other thing for me was that you were creatively sort of you were finding it difficult. You were coming up to dead ends, so it would be quite easy to go, well, actually, I'm just going to go with that sample. But you didn't. You went, I'm going to go and find a decent sax sample, and you did, and actually that was what sold it in many ways, because it sort of really drove the piece. I thought it was great. But Brian's picked out the stuff about, for you to have think about with the chords and stuff. But as a film composition, that's what that was very, very strong in this piece. That you were very mindful of how the film was, the sound design, the way it was edited, the punctuation, and all that stuff that we.
Well done, Sally. Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it. One more. Okay.
Great. Okay. Again, I thought this was really good. I love that dissonant beginning. Just really, really nice. Really worked a treat. You can't go wrong using those kind of things. A really nice, genuinely authentic 70s kind of funk feel. Works really well, and it's like, a slight change from the pure jazz stuff we've heard earlier, if you like. I love that kind of shimmering string build-up. I think it was 8 or 9 seconds. Just really, really classic film music, adherence to film music conventions. Great rhythmic syncopation all the way through, but you observe the pictures, and that's the absolutely crucial thing here. The music sounds good because obviously it is good, but because it serves the pictures, which makes it sound even better. The music dipped when the pictures were making a point, which was really good, and the opposite happened sometimes. I love those semi-quaver trombone things, that ba-da, ba-da, just really spot on. Great writing. You obviously listened a lot to this kind of music, and you've taken on board what kind of things people use. Nice chord changes throughout, and some really nice sultry kind of chord changes. I love the bit where you go on the 7th, the flat 10 chord, and you go, then you go down, I think, in semitones, and then you go somewhere else. But it's that great thing of actually using the flat 9 chord, sorry, the flat 10 chord, classic jazz chord, and then actually going down or up by a semitone.
A real groove for it. You've obviously spent time thinking about how to make this work in terms of the retro style, and it just really worked. I noted down actually that I put, you only had to read your notes to see how much of a handle you had on this, and because you describe in your notes about when we see the man through a window as a crime boss. So you established a narrative, and I thought that was what was again, it's our theme of the evening, talking about how you were storytelling with this, and you took certain elements to help craft that story. So you punctuated the clip again. I thought really well, particularly that end section. But I thought that it felt like it belonged to the picture actually, and I think it was that groove that you had with the bass. My only thing take really, the only comments I really was the production, because it was kind of that sort of that bass hook that you had. I felt that probably a stronger sound for it would have been that bit more effective, because it had that thing of, and I can imagine me doing this myself, as a mix, trying different things, because it had almost like it was a bass played with a plectrum rather than having it playing with fingers, or you can maybe you would have 2 tracks, or you would have a DI bass, and then a bass amp sound. In other words, you could probably spend ages getting the bass right, because I thought you probably could have had a stronger bass sound for it, because it was driven by that bass hook in lots of ways. I know there's lots of other things that Brian's picked out that come on top of that bass thing, but that circular hook which was great. And also same with the drums, that I'm getting them to sort of sit with the drums a little bit better. So I just put on my notes that bit more development in the production. But again, I think what was really sort of stood out to me was how you crafted it to the picture with this piece, and you didn't just tend to go right over. I mean, there was a bit of that writing on top, but mainly that you shaped it around the narrative of the picture. So loved it. It was great. Well done, Kate.
Excellent. Kate, anything you want to say in defense?
You're still muted.
Yeah, Kate's muted at the moment.
She's finding the mute. There we go.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
So
Yeah.
I thank you very much, first of all. I kind of made a rule for myself, so I don't because I was a bit of an addict at buying sample libraries, spending all my money on it. So I kind of made a rule for myself that I had to make do with what I had for all of these. And I think that's just kind of a weak part of my sample libraries. I also how I'm using them, but I was using ones that came free with contact for the bass and the drums. So I probably shouldn't have done that, but
Yeah, funny enough, one of the things I noted, because I've obviously listened to more of your submissions in the past, and I was thinking maybe that, I know it's not easy this, but the next stage is to incorporate some live audio. I mean, if you'd had a live bass on that, actually, I think that would have, really sort of taken it to the next level, because it was the bass sound to me that was the sort of problem of it. But as a piece, it was great. It was really, really good.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And how new is this kind of style for you, Kate?
Not very. I played in a all-woman fusion band in my 20s. So kind of tied in a bit with that. I'm a violinist, so I play violin and fusion.
Excellent. All righty. Did you have fun?
I did.
Good.
A lot of fun.
Good. I hope everybody had a bit of fun digging into this genre. We certainly had fun putting the clip together, and really enjoyed hearing those submissions. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brian and Stefan. I think there's a couple of bits of housekeeping to do. First of all, who is going to be the lucky recipient of the string quartet recording session for this month? Have we decided?
Do you want me to, Brian, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go for it, Steph. Yeah.
Right, okay. So obviously we had long discussions, and we have had a long discussion this afternoon, and we've decided to go with Sally on this one.
Oh.
So well done, Sally.
Thank you very much. Wow, that's a shock.
There you are.
Well, I think we had long discussions, as we said, and earlier. I think there's thing about the idea of writing to the picture, and I think that was some real strength to that piece. So well done, Sally.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can enjoy your weekend now. You can.
Thanks very much.
You can walk tall this weekend around Derbyshire. Just think about what you would like to do with the string quartet. It can be a completely new piece, an old piece that you want to dust off, about 3 minutes worth of music, and get in touch and we'll organise everything. We've got a whole queue of them waiting now, including Kate. And
brilliant. Excited about that.
So yes.
That's lovely. Thanks very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for being such a long-standing, faithful submitter. It pays off, you see, it pays off. We also have the draw for the sample library from our good friends at Fracture Sounds. If you haven't checked out Fracture Sounds, please do. They have some free libraries, as many of the companies do these days, and they have some unfree libraries, as many of them do these days, and they're all really good stuff. And they're also based in the north of England, which is reason enough to check out their sounds. Not far from Brian, I think. So let me activate the marvellous wheel of names and spin away. Good luck, everybody. We have a winner. Francis Garcia. Wonderful.
Well, Francis is with us. Look.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm so glad to win this.
Congratulations. I will send you.
Thank you.
I will send you an email and we will organise that for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, great.
Great.
Francis, where are you?
I am in Spain.
In Spain?
Near Madrid and Toledo.
Aha, okay. Nice. Very good. All righty. Well, I think that concludes everything. We have a clip out at the moment, free for members. Coffee Run. Are any of you thumbs up if any of you are having a go at Coffee Run? Yeah. It's a really nice clip, and we had a masterclass last week, which will hopefully give some ideas to tackle that. Submissions closed for that on the 1st of October. What else have I forgotten, chaps? There must be something. I always forget something. That's about it, isn't it? Good luck to Brian.
Yeah, well done.
I was going to say, I did send you something. I don't know if you had time to see it in your emails.
No.
Yeah, it was basically a while ago.
I switched everything off.
A while ago, I've written quite a few books on film music, and I wrote a smaller book, so it's 100 pages or something, and it's purely on kind of American jazz TV themes. Mm-hmm. And I sent you the PDF through, so feel free to send it out to these guys. It could be useful.
Yeah, marvelous.
Yeah. Okay. It's just got the iron side. It's got loads of the stuff we talked about in the class. So yeah, it could be interesting anyway. Yeah.
That's really generous. Thank you. I need to apologise as well, because as usual, we've had some glitches with the live stream along the way. Sometimes the sound was dipping out. I think I caught most of them fairly quickly, but I can only apologise. There's absolutely nothing I can do really. It's just the software is an absolute piece of rubbish, and yeah, I just have to keep my eye on the meter. Literally, I just have to keep watching the meter, and then suddenly it just like stops, and I just have to like do a reset, and it comes back to life. So I apologise, but I think we got 99% of the live stream, no problem. So thanks everyone. It's lovely to see all your lovely faces from around the world, and I hope you found it enjoyable and useful. I wish you a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you for the next one.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
See you later, guys.
See you later.
Okay.
Gonna kick you out now. Bye.
Thank you.